On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, we finish up our bold predictions. Will Jalen Brunson dominate at the rim? Will the Knicks be the best three-point shooting team in basketball? Could Mitchell Robinson stay and start? Let's find out next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks. I want to remind you that today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, though we could forgive you if you checked out part one of the Knicks Film School side or part two on the Locked On Knicks side of our bold prediction series. This is part three. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to subscribe. Be sure to hit that notifications bell to ensure you never miss an episode on YouTube, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform of choice so you always have us with you on the go. And then who's shilling for subs? I'm Gavin, Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. He's Alex Wolfe, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land and join legends like Josh Hart in following them there. And then we'll get into it now. This is a really fun one. We turn up the heat. We were a little lukewarm in episode one. We turn up the heat, I think, a little bit in this one with some final bold predictions to send you out. I won't delay it any longer. Let's get into it right now with Jonathan Macri and Jeremy Cohen.
My last prediction is that Jalen Brunson finishes over, I said 68% at the rim. And I think that's pretty bold. And the reason I think it's bold is last season, Jalen Brunson finished, according to this is all basketball reference, 65.3% at the rim. The year before, 62.2. But then in Dallas, he was at 69.4 and at 77.9. The 77.9 was a smaller sample size, but not by a ton. It was 145 attempts, and the year after 183. Year after that, 201, and then last year 259. So, I'm not going to say, hey, he's going to get back to over 70%. I think that's crazy. But with the amount of space that the Knicks now have, where you don't have Mitchell Robinson in the dunker spot to at least start the season. And if we're saying he's not going to play at all, then this isn't a problem. If we're saying he comes later, then, there's also the world where they don't really share the floor very much, where there's enough open space where Jalen Brunson can take better shots. And if he's taking better shots, then they're hopefully leading to more conversions, of course, a higher field goal percentage at the rim. So, he's always going to fall. He's always going to flop. Not flopping like that, but he's just, in a way that he always seems to make contact. Campaign does this too. I noticed in preseason, just feels like he's always winding up on the ground. But, you don't have to make it tougher for yourself. But with fewer bodies in the paint, the hope would be you see improved results. So I'm going to go with over 68% at the rim this year.
John, what do you think about it?
I'm deciding if I want to call jalapeno on this. So I'm looking at cleaning the glass. Last year, 69%. So you're saying over 68, so at least 69. 69% at the rim among point guards was in the 84th percentile league-wide. 70% actually was in the 93rd percentile league-wide. And I see Devin Booker is listed as a point guard for cleaning the glass. So
I just real quick, I did look at cleaning the glass beforehand to see if the percentages matched up. And to your point, they don't. So I don't want to have it be a cop out of like, well, he's just going to be level with what was there. So if you want to say 70% for, basketball reference, or 70% for cleaning the glass, 68% for basketball reference, totally fine to do that.
Yeah. But either way, like, Jalen Brunson is one of the great players, so he should be in the top 15 or 20% of a category. That said, his greatness exists in his manipulation and all the chicanery that he does in the mid range. I guess it's maybe a little bit spicier than a jalapeno. The thing I'm curious about, and it's not really part of your prediction, or maybe it kind of implied that it is just how often he shoots in the restricted area. So to just pull it up. So what did you say he shot last year? 50. He was at 50. He was at 60% even at the rim
last year. 65.3%. According, this is basketball reference.
Okay. So frequency, according to again, cleaning the glass at the rim, this is where it's really in his 2 years as a Knick, 21% of his shots came at the rim his first year, 19% of his shots came at the rim last year. That number was in the 30th percentile. So like very few point guards get to the rim less than he has. I just wonder, can that number at least become league average among point guards? And that's, I think, almost as important, if not more important than the accuracy.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as John. I think that's the only way he doesn't shoot that well at the rim is if the frequency just goes way, way, way up and he's getting fouled more and like defenses are like somehow more aggressive contesting. But there's just not really a way to do it with the Knicks starting lineup, right?
No.
Unless you want to say like Mikal Bridges tanks so badly that he's not being guarded out there, which even with my bold prediction, I think he's still going to be treated as a shooter. I think that takes at least a year to adjust. I think it would be hard for Jalen Brunson not to shoot that well at the rim. He's just too skilled. There's going to be too much room. We saw it over and over again. Like I go back to a Timberwolves game where like Dante DiVincenzo was guarding him, and then there was no one else in the way to the rim. Like you get a big switched on you. Like it's Jalen Brunson versus a big, and maybe more often than not, they'll be like sitting all the way back and conceding mid range. And if he tortures them enough from there, then they'll come up and it'll go by. But like it's a pick your poison situation. And there's no way the other team wins. So I think he's going to shoot great from there. Alex, I don't know. I assume optimist, you're in on this?
Yeah, I am pretty well in on it. I'll just throw another factor out there too. Last year he saw a big improvement, and this probably led to, in part, well, maybe not totally, but what helps your shooting percentage around the rim too is if you're drawing more fouls, because then those don't count towards your ledger. Ultimately, unless you make it. And last year, his and one percentage per cleaning the glass, I just looked the stat up the other day, went up by like a significant amount. Like he went from, so his shooting fouled percentage held pretty much steady at around like 13% or something like that.
Yeah, Alex,
so
I got the number if you want it. It went from 29.6 to 38.8.
Jump.
Yeah, that one I did remember because it was almost a 10-point jump. It's crazy. So almost 10% more of the time that he got fouled, he finished and made an and one. Now that number, that 38%, is similar to his best of what he did in Dallas. So I don't think there's any reason to think that he won't do even better because the defense is going to be more tilted this year. He's going to have easier opportunities, and his finishing just keeps getting better and better every year with the Knicks. So I don't see why he, with more space to operate and all that, why it wouldn't get better. That said, I mean, it is, a 5% increase. So I don't know if it, I would still probably say it's a jalapeno. I think that's where I'm coming to. Not the most Scovely take ever. But I think it has a pretty good chance of happening. And I think that we all need to have at least one that we can feel pretty good about possibly happening this year, because it just helps our self-esteem the next year so much to have one of these actually work.
I wouldn't know I wouldn't know what that's like.
Same.
Well, as someone who got one nice and right last year, it feels great. It feels great, guys. Which brings me to my next bold prediction. So,
but first, I want to tell you guys about our good friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with, and I need to emphasize, but this is a crazy number, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Alex, I know where I'd go with that money, and that is against the stinking fat Boston Celtics. They have been gorging themselves since their NBA championship. Jason Tatum can't shoot. Jaylen Brown is pissed at everyone. Derek White seems like a really nice guy, but I don't care about that right now. The Knicks, a -5 line, or excuse me, a +5 line against the Boston Celtics, meaning that the Celtics are 5-point favorites. I don't buy it. The Knicks are going to win, or they're going to lose on a brutal last-second shot that we will talk to you about tonight. But for now, put some money down on the Knicks. Again, that is just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets with your first bet on FanDuel.com.
which brings me to my final bold prediction, which this is the one that I definitely think I'm going to look the most foolish on. I just don't think it's going to happen, but I want to believe in a world where this prediction can happen. My last prediction is that the Knicks are a top 5 3-point team in makes, takes, and percentage this year, which is a
Did Boston do that last
high.
year?
Did who?
Did Boston do that last year?
That's a good question.
I'll look it up while you're talking because I'm just thinking
Okay.
what like who actually can possibly do this, and I think it might just be Boston. I'll look it up.
It might just be. And so that's me really believing in the 3-point shooting talent that the Knicks have added, and believing in Mikal Bridges' shot not being destroyed, because he'll be a huge part of that. I think he's going to have to, in many ways, play the Dante role in this arrangement and be the guy that's going to be taking a lot of catch and shoot threes, along with OG, obviously. But OG kind of already plays the OG role regardless, which he did last year. So, like, Mikal's going to have to be able to step in and hit at a high level on high volume this year. Similar, if not better, than what he did in Brooklyn last year. But the stats to back this up / show why this is pretty spicy, I think. So in 22 to 23, I'm only factoring in the Brunson years here because I think that's all that matters. In 22 to 23, they were 8th in attempts from 3, 11th in total makes from 3, and 19th in 3-point percentage. Famously, that was the year where they relied so heavily on offensive rebounds that it basically was their whole offense. And then last year, the Knicks were 13th in attempts, so actually went down. As strange as that is, that kind of raised my eyebrows. 10th in makes and 14th in percentage. So this is gonna be a monumental shift if this happens. And yet, based off how they were playing in the preseason and the fact that I believe in the guys that they've brought in as consistent 3-point shooters for their whole career, I do think that they can pull this off. But Jeremy, how do you feel about that as a very analytics-minded man?
It's bold, just based on the numbers you presented. I mean, this is, yes, I expect them to rise, but to hit all 3 categories, it's kind of like you and Gavin, you guys like your parlays. You know, there's a lot that rides on it for all of them to come through. But if it does, I mean, that it's going to be a huge win. It's just how you get to those. I mean, the attempts, of course, it's probably on the easier side, especially because the clean looks that the Knicks will have. Makes, of course, especially if you are pessimistic about Mikal Bridges, then that probably tanks the number that the Knicks would be shooting percentage-wise. Is Josh Hart going to play significant minutes in the starting lineup? How is that going to be a factor? Makes, I think, could definitely be top 5. That one I feel pretty good about, but it's the percentages that I'm a little dubious on for hitting.
Yeah, I think the percentage is what scares me the most too, if I'm being honest. I think that's really hard to hit. I think the main thing, if you're looking at it like forensically, is like how big does adding Cat taking the same, if not more volume than what Julius Randle was taking affect that overall number? Like, I was a big lover of Julius on the Knicks, and I defended him plenty, but like his 3-point shooting was abysmal to start last year, and I think it was so abysmal that it actually sunk the team's number to a degree. And Quentin Grimes was really not shooting well right from the rip last year, and was taking a lot of attempts. Like, really, I think I might pull this stat once I throw it to John, but the post All-Star break number might give me a little more clarity on how this could work, because I think there was a lot that didn't work for the Knicks shooting the 3 at the early part of last year that really tanked their numbers. But if this team can essentially just replace Dante, really is the big one. Like, if they can find a way to replace Dante's production from 3 and get better at other positions, I think they have a chance to make this happen. So it's going to be tough. But John, how are you feeling on the whole ordeal? And did you find that Boston?
Yeah.
So it's search for another stat.
No, so it's not that rare. Boston did indeed do it last year. They're the only team. The previous year, Golden State did it, and Boston missed by literally 0.1% of joining Golden State because Boston the previous year made it in makes and attempts. And the year before that, so the 21-22 season, Milwaukee did it. So it's about one team per year that does it. So not impossible. I think they're going to get there in attempts. I don't have much question about that. I mean, between Cat bombing away and Campaign bombing away so far in the preseason, like I just think, I may have missed it. Alex, did you say the preseason where they're at in terms of 3-point attempts per game?
No, I did not. I would imagine quite high.
So they are, if we take away the foreign teams, they're actually lower than I would have thought. That they're tied for 12th. They're 41 threes per game. Boston 52.6, and surprisingly the Bulls 47.8. So what do you know? But they're like borderline top 10. I think if you take out a couple of teams that are not NBA teams. I think they'll get there in attempts. I really do think they're going to fire away. No, it's spicy. It's definitely spicy. I'm trying to think of what the path would be. All of their guys that are gonna shoot threes can shoot threes. Like that's encouraging. Like who's the guy that's gonna think about it this way? I hate to do this, but like they were kind of weighed down by Julius because Julius always put up a lot, and with the exception of 1 year, his percentage was never good. And he had to put up a lot, like for the purposes of their offense to flow. Like now, I get that they lost Dante. They also lost Julius. They replaced him with Cat. It's I hate to do this also to McCall, like I wonder how much of it rides on Bridges, because if you could pencil in Bridges for 7 or 8 attempts a game at 40% or 39%, then you're looking great. If all of a sudden now Bridges becomes more 34, 35, even 36%. Then it's not as nifty. The only other thing I'll say is like I think Jalen Brunson took a lot of really difficult threes last year by necessity. And I don't know how many of those he's going to take next year. Or this upcoming season. So I think that's a plus. I could see it being yes for attempts and just missing for makes and percentage.
I think it's super bold. I was thinking of a prediction along the same lines, but it would have been directly contradictory to my Mikal Bridges one. So I thought that one was more interesting. So I went with it, but I'm with you. I think it's doable, if not challenging. They have the guys across the board. To me, the swing factor here is Deuce McBride. He shot, 41% from three last year. Ball. And I think the volume is going to be pretty crazy for him on a permanent basis. He took 27 threes in 3 preseason games, so that's 9 per game.
He took the third most shots per game in the preseason of every NBA player.
He was not shy at all, and I think that'll continue into the regular season. Like I think he's gone from someone who's afraid to shoot to kind of the ultimate gunner. And like if he's a 40% 3-point shooter again, I think again barring Mikal, like I think Mikal has to get to the point that John did. But outside of that, if he can shoot threes on volume, 38% or above, I think this is doable. If not, I just don't know if they're quite going to get there in terms of percentage. Though it's again, if Mikal shoots well, it's too like OG's going to shoot well. It would be stunning if Cat didn't shoot well. It'd be pretty stunning if Brunson didn't shoot well. Like who else are they really going to play that's going to take threes and not make
Campaign?
Them?
But Campaign makes. I think Campaign will make them.
He's shots look good this preseason, so I think it's a really good prediction. I think it's bold. I think it's doable. Yeah.
Dottier is going to shoot like 55% from deep in his 500 minutes. So
I will just say before I throw to you, Gavin, for your final prediction to take us home, I did look up the post All-Star break numbers. The Knicks. So I feel like I accidentally picked a Pepper X level prediction here, because even with how much the Knicks improved from 3 to end the season last year, post All-Star break, they were 8th in makes, 10th in attempts, and 11th in percentage. So this
I think that's encouraging.
It's encouraging, but it's
given who their personnel was, I think that's very encouraging.
I guess, but it's not that big of an improvement from what their overall number for the whole season was, which
I don't know, man. They were playing with 3 non-shooters out on the floor at once for like more than any NBA team should in the year of our Lord 2024.
Well, thank you for propping me up, John. I appreciate it.
I just want you to be. I want this prediction to be less bold, so you say that every one of my predictions is like the equivalent of eating a tomato. But no, I'm curious. I'm curious to get to Gavin's last one here.
All right, guys, we'll be right back in. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And what's something that scares you? That's an interesting question, right? And it's Halloween time, spooky season. You know, we're drinking pumpkin spice lattes and being scared by ghosts and ghouls and zombies. But there are real things in life that scare us a little more than that sometimes. It could be fear of failure. It could be fear of rejection. It could be fear of not doing well enough, not being well liked, you know, whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of fears. I think we all go through them. It could even be, you know, like a fear of heights or a fear of trying something new or whatever. Everybody's afraid of plenty of things. And this Halloween season, if you're afraid of things that are not necessarily Halloween related, maybe you should give BetterHelp a try to work through some of those things and conquer your fears. If you're thinking of starting therapy, BetterHelp is definitely worth a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Okay, so this is a fun one because you guys, I looked and I was like, oh, like unfortunately we couldn't get it all into one episode, but you guys each had a prediction that was in direct contrast to this. So I'm excited for a little debate. And my prediction is that the Knicks hold on to Mitchell Robinson, and to Jeremy's point of my love of parlays, I had to make it just a little spicier because I kind of like towing the line there. I'm going to say he starts their first playoff game next to Karl-Anthony Towns, which I think undoubtedly is the part that pushes this into ghost pepper territory, because to John's point, you trade for Karl-Anthony Towns, it is nominally to play him at center. But let me make my case here. I think that Tom Thibodeau does not totally want to lose the identity that's defined the Knicks the last few years. And I've said over and over again, basically since we've had Jalen Brunson, for a big who basically does not do anything other than dunk the basketball on offense, Mitchell Robinson has like a disproportionate weight in defining the identity of this team. Because it was all, I mean, it was Julius Randle and his, to your point, John, inability to shoot it on volume and accurately too. But this was a team that was a top 5 offense built around offensive rebounding. And this is a coach in Tom Thibodeau who has been eminently comfortable at times playing two bigs who can't shoot. What was it? It was Sims and Hartenstein. We got like that 8-game stretch when they had all the injuries 2 or 3 years ago now. That was the ugliest basketball we've seen. If he's comfortable doing that, if he's comfortable doing
a lot of games.
Sorry, what did you say?
They won a lot of games during that stretch. That was the correct me if I'm wrong. That was the streak.
Like 89 to 87, but they had their defensive rating, I think, was something like 94 during that. It was insane. He's comfortable doing that. He's been comfortable playing Randall and Mitch together for years. Why not Towns and Mitch continuing that identity? And like, I understand you lose the power of 5 out, but I think Tibbs is a man of creature comforts. He wants his binky. He wants his blanket. Josh Hart is more often than not his safety blanket. I think Mitchell Robinson is also a safety blanket. And the appeal of just being super big around Jalen Brunson, right? Having Mikal, OG, I almost said Randall, Cat, and Mitch, I think is a lineup, even if it doesn't start, it's one we'll see. But I think based on who they play in the first round of the playoffs, you could see him go with that. Would that be a starting lineup ever against the Boston Celtics? Basketball gods forbid. I don't think so. But I do think Mitch has a clear-cut role to staying on this team, and that's stopping the Embiids of the world. That's being a dominant offensive rebounder that can be exaggerated by him playing with 4 shooters consistently for the first time in his Knicks career. And that's something I was dying to see last year. We got robbed of seeing because of all the injuries. I think that could look really good. I think it could make Mitch look a lot better. And finally, like, I kind of think there is a role for him to play against a team like the Celtics. Like, where the Knicks have had success against Boston over the years, it's generally not playing their game. It's because they're saying like, hey, like, that's cute. You're going to shoot a million threes. We're going to beat the crap out of you under the basket. And without Mitchell Robinson, you lose some of your ability to do that. Maybe the lighter take version of this is that Precious can accomplish a lot of what Mitch gives you while giving you at least like
interesting.
some nominal spacing while Mitch gives you none. So I think that's going to be the pushback from you guys. I hear it. It's probably a tad too bold that he'll actually start that game. I could just see that being Tom Thibodeau's sweet spot and it actually working out pretty well. To Alex's point earlier, based on that Minnesota model where you go player for player and the Knicks would look very similar to the team that was just far and away the best defense in basketball and made a conference finals run.
Let's take this one at a time. The second part of the prediction, which is that he starts the playoff game.
Mhm.
If he's here, I don't think that's that crazy because again, it could be a matchup thing where you're playing a team that that makes more sense. Plus, like we've seen Tibbs obviously in the past, not only with the Knicks, with other teams, like start someone, play them the first 6-7 minutes of the game, they go off the court, and maybe we don't see them again during that half. So, like, I don't think that's crazy. You play devil's advocate to your point when I brought this up on the last half of the episode, so I'll do the same in return. We have never, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you have an encyclopedic memory of all this stuff. We've never seen, and you kind of went through it actually in the last episode, we've never seen the Knicks make a trade in which they are sending out the more talented player than the one they're bringing back, right?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so either.
It really depends on how you rate Karl-Anthony Towns, but
well,
no.
Sure, okay. But consensus opinion at the time, which is probably or why you made your prediction that Mitchell Robinson would be traded for a top 100 player. Well, if that trade isn't there and they don't feel like they could bring back a clear upgrade over the potential of what Mitch can bring them potentially in a playoff series, even if it's only for, again, 14, 16, 18 minutes a game, then maybe they just don't make the trade and or make a trade, I guess I should say, because the trade is not there. So I think there are reasons to think that this could actually happen. It's just I think it just largely depends on the trade market.
The thing that would fly in the face of my prediction is, what if the Knicks moved Mitchell Robinson for another player and then moved that player for another one? Kind of like the red paperclip theory in, like using Cam Reddish. Knicks got Cam Reddish, and then they shopped him, and then they traded him for Josh Hart a year later. Of course, his value was a lot lower at the time, but also, it seems a lot of the time that even with these guys whose value is low, they're still able to do something productive and get good talent in the door. So I think the starting in the playoffs portion, especially, I know that the Knicks had Hartenstein starting ahead of Mitchell Robinson when Mitch came back last playoff run, but I think that if he's still on the Knicks, it's coming off of the bench, especially because of how they might want to protect him from certain injury or based on just how they're using Jericho Sims. Bringing him as the backup 5, playing him with Precious Achiuwa, if that's the direction they wanted to go. And they could also try to get a different center. Who knows? But with Mitch, I think if he is still here, which, I think it's not outrageous to say, hey, they don't find a team that wants him. I ultimately think they do, but I think if he is here, it's because he's in a different role, and that's the off the bench backup center. He's not a backup center. He's just in the backup center role because he's got a 2024-25 All-Star in Karl-Anthony Towns that's starting ahead of him.
Yeah, I go back and forth on where the Knicks are going to fall with the experiment of potentially trying to integrate Mitch. And I hope that they give it a fair shake. I don't know for sure. Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on, do you think that new Tibbs wins out, or do you think Tibbs's old sensibilities win out? Because it's like, this guy's a totally different coach than he was a few years ago. Like I give him all the props in the world. Like people still go back every once in a while to, there was like a short that we did like during the 21 to 22 season, or that I did, like, cause we always record little instant reaction, videos, whatever, after the games. And I made one that was basically like, the Knicks need to fire Tibbs now. This dude is never going to change, whatever. And to his credit, like, he came back that next year in that first year of Brunson, and he changed and like revolutionized the NBA with the offensive rebounding, emphasis and everything, and honestly, like, became a trendsetter. And last year did something that I don't think any of us were thinking he would do, and played Josh Hart as the full-time backup for first off, and then later on is just straight up the full-time starting for, as necessary, once Randall went down. And I think that there's a chance that he's willing to make this whole thing work with Cat at the 5, but there's also a chance that if it's not producing what he wants on defense, that he'll be like chomping at the bit for Mitch to get back and be like, we need to get this guy back. I need my defense to be as shored up as it can be. I'm not confident with where we're at right now once it comes to playoff basketball. I do worry that once teams kind of figure out what the Knicks are going to be doing with Cat, that they're going to attempt to bait him into the foul trouble that has plagued him throughout his career. And if that's the case, you're going to want that security blanket for him. So I think I kind of waffle on this one. I don't really come down one way or the other, because I kind of see where Jeremy's coming from with the trade angle of, like, I think that they're probably going to try to get an upgrade by using Mitch and his salary slot, and and the player that he is. Hopefully some team views him still as a piece, and the Knicks would be able to make some sort of trade to improve there. And yet I can also see where Gavin's coming from. I think there's a chance that if he comes back and he starts playing and playing well, that the Knicks ultimately just say, this is like, let's lean into this. Let's have him play in the playoffs, and let's try to make this work and recreate some of what they did in Minnesota, but with half a season of Cat at the 5, consistently, so that we can comfortably say, like, okay, this game, the game flow dictates, let's not play Mitch as much. But this next game, it might say game flow says, let's play Mitch more. So I can see both sides. Sort of the most waffly, sitting on the fence way to end a bold predictions episode. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
Maybe it could be a little of both. You play both bigs, but you remember the fact that Mitchell Robinson, one of the best lob catching bigs in the league, who's the best lob throwing big in the league? Probably Karl-Anthony Towns. And we saw that with Gobert. So, like, the notion that can't become at least part of New York's offense for, and again, like, how much are these guys really going to play together every game if Mitch doesn't get traded? Like, is it 10 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? It probably isn't going to be that many. So, yeah.
It's kind of the same way I feel about Deuce starting, and I'll pull up Bill Simmons here. Just like can I see it? Like, I'm hoping we don't get the super bold version of John's prediction that Jeremy threw out there, and we get 0 minutes of Mitch. Like, I just want to see what that lineup looks like, because I think it could, like, and we've seen this in the past when, like, the Knicks go double big with Mitch, like, could just be the best defense in basketball. And the offense with Towns, Anunoby, McHale, and Brunson on the floor is, I think, never going to be anything less than top 10, even if Mitchell Robinson's at center. And that could be at least for the regular season, that could be the most dominant version of this team. It depends on where Cat's ceiling is defensively, but I think there's a world where that is a pretty incredible lineup. I want to get a look before we close the door on that.
All right. Well, I think that is as good a point as any to wrap up this bold predictions episode. So, John, Jeremy, thank you guys for coming on so much, and always enjoy this yearly crossover. It always seems to just sneak right up on me, where I go, man, it feels like we just did that yesterday. And then all of a sudden the new season's starting, and here we are back again, being horribly wrong and embarrassing ourselves for the next 365 days. So thank you for coming on and embarrassing yourselves with us. Of course, if anyone has not listened, we're now on part 3 of this series. We've done 2 parts here on Locked On and 1 on the Knicks Film School feed. So if you reach this point, this is the only episode you listen to, make sure you go back and listen to every part of this, so you can hear just how wrong we'll be for the whole season. But yeah, keep your eyes out for, if you're here from Knicks Film School, we're on 5 days a week at Locked On Knicks. If you're here just as a Locked On Knicks listener, Knicks Film School, they're putting out just as much content. Lots and lots of stuff coming from both of us. So make sure to keep it locked during the whole season and beyond. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.